Humans. In the first part of Racism Dies One Funeral at a Time, I talked about my family's experience with what I perceive as a declining amount of racism and how it gives me hope for the future and shows that things do in fact change. When people are committed to making positive change, they can do it. It takes a lot of effort, and there is struggle, but change happens when people are focused on making change happen. The second video, I kind of went back, at least virtually, and checked up on this town that I mentioned in the first video, this small town in Mississippi, that I observed as, as it was in many small towns in the Deep South, a lot of racism, right? A lot of racist attitudes. So I wanted to see if things have changed. And in fact, a lot has changed. The police force is now led by a black man, and it is 90% of the officers are black as well. That's at a symbolic level, given all the dialogue we have about race and policing, that's powerful. That inversion in the power balance, that's powerful symbolically. But in a practical way, on a daily basis, a black person who sees a blue light flashing in his rearview mirror has a different feeling about, I'm guessing, black cops can be hard on black people as well. We've seen that a lot too. But, he may have a different feeling about a 90% black police force and how he may be treated versus when the police force was all white, okay? And now a white person who, in 2024, a white person who, back in 1970, might see a blue light and say, oh, that's Bubba, I bet. I'll ask him how his mama and them are doing and, promise to give him a six-pack and maybe he'll let me off. Well, Bubba ain't in that car now. The encounter may be a little different. I'm not saying it's going to be harsh or there's going to be any payback or anything. It's just going to be different. And that difference at those two different levels, symbolically and practically, that's powerful to me, is at least the way I look at the world. So now here we are in part 3, and let's turn the tables a little bit and let's talk about black people. Each generation of black people that dies, the older generations that black people die, a lot of their memories of the trauma that their grandparents and parents told them, the stories that they told them, many of those stories will die. Many of the stories that they passed along as a protective, honestly, these were protective kinds of stories. I want to warn you about my experience of white people in order to protect you, okay, when you encounter them. So a lot of them would be, you can't trust them. You can't be around them. They'll try to kill you. They'll try to do terrible things to you. And in some generations, that was true. Now, you will say that in 2024, that's true too. And I will tell you that the facts simply do not support an argument that says it's as bad now as it's ever been. It isn't. We have so much data now that we never did. At some point, I hope to do a video about the research that Roland Fryer, a Harvard economist, did, where he went in and did a study on police brutality, particularly police killings, and thought he had a layup, right? He went into this thinking it was going to be really easy to prove that police kill black people at a much higher rate than they kill white people. So at Harvard, with all of its resources, he set out to do this research. When the findings came back, they did in fact confirm that black people are roughed up, or words to that effect, are roughed up more frequently. They have physical encounters with police more often than other races do. But in fact, in terms of killings, this is his research, a black man, okay? A black professor who went into this believing he was going to confirm his hypothesis that black people get killed a lot more frequently by police than other races do. And the data did not support it. He was like, oh, let me rub my eyes. This can't be true, right? This was a layup. Everybody knows that black people get killed more often by police than white people. Everybody knows that. So now that I've done this study and I get this data back that says, no, that's not the fact, something in the milk ain't clean. So he crumbled it up, all of that research, threw it away, got a new set of research assistants, and did the study again. Guess what he found out? In fact, for the second time, with a new set of students, assistant researchers, he found that, in fact, black people are not killed with any higher frequency by police than whites or any other race. So the stories that were told by black grandparents to your parents and then your parents to you about black people don't trust the police because they will kill you. For their grandparents, that was more true. Now, how often it was, I don't know all things. I don't know the frequency, but I do know that it was far more true and far more frequent than in 2024. It probably, I'm guessing it diminished meaningfully. The number of police killings of black people diminished from your grandparents to your lifetime, okay? And now in your children's life, but you're still warning them, especially given since Black Lives Matter, you're still warning them you can't trust the white people. You can't trust policemen. They'll kill you. It's not true. They may kill you, but it's not any more frequently than they will kill anyone else. So my hope is that these stories that were true at one point in time, that were cautionary tales that made black people afraid and made them in turn have their own anger and racism toward others, largely based on a world that does not exist like it did for your grandparents or for you. And those stories, their virality, just like the racist virality that I discussed in the first one, those stories become more echoes of the past. And when young black children are not oppressed by unfounded fears, they think different thoughts. If you oppress a child's imagination with, you can't, they'll kill you, they'll kill you, they'll kill you. You're not safe, you're not safe, you're not safe. Black people can never succeed. You got to be 5 times as good. Bang, 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 bang. That's conditioning. And the more those things are repeated, if you were hearing those things every day as a child, you're going to repeat them. You're going to hear those voices over and over. I can't. No use. No use in trying. You can't win. What defeatist language. It is almost child abuse. It's almost child abuse. If I told my children that gave my children that kind of negative programming, even if it was something that was programmed in me, even if some of it was true at some point in the future, at some point in the past, to repeat it as though it was the past instead of today, no bueno. Don't do that. Don't keep on passing along trauma warnings in a world that doesn't exist anymore. I want you to look at the world around you, and I want you to remember how much it has changed, just the technology alone. And culture has changed right along with that. You know, when we were young, remember the telephone that was hanging up in the kitchen? You had the long cord so you could stretch it down the hallway or go take it into the recliner, you know, in the living room and sit down and talk along too long until your parents go, I need the phone. You get off the phone. You're always on the phone. And now everybody's got their phone, and it's in their pocket, and it's a computer, and it's a supercomputer. Okay, that's a change. I used to want to have to pay a bill. I had to go get an envelope. I had to write a check. I had to lick a stamp. I had to address it. I had to walk to the mailbox. Now I just log in online, select the account, enter the amount, I hit pay, and it's done instantly. The amount of change that we have seen in this world across every single human dimension, including race relations, the amount of change that has happened in the last 60 years, 100 years, is mind-boggling. Yet I continue to hear people who speak, and I believe they believe it, but it's not true. We can often tell ourselves a lot of really dangerous bullshit, who speak about race relations like it was 1960. Those people, when they die, that kind of messaging, that kind of story, and its negative impact, particularly on young people, and depressing their hopes, depressing their aspirations, engendering this sense of futility, continuing to feed a sense of learned helplessness. Not here. Not here. We ain't going to do that, homie. No. And some of you are hearing some of this for the first time. It's hard to believe that some of you are hearing somebody call bullshit on some of these stories for the first time. We can continue to call bullshit on the things that we believe. Am I right? I don't know. It's my observation. It's my call. It's my 2 cents. I'm interested in your 2 cents. I'm interested in particular, I'd love to sit down with a professional in particular, a middle-class, white-collar, black professional. And I want to hear your worst personal experiences with racism throughout your life. How many have there been? Inward, other insults, just, by white people to you personally, or blatant racism in the workplace, objectively, right? Because there's a lot of folks who come in with where there's a racist hiding behind every bush for some people and every small thing. Oh, it's a microaggression. No, I'm not talking about all that. I'm talking about full-blown, unvarnished, ain't no doubt about it, racism. I want to hear about that from you. I want to talk about that with you. I've talked to a lot of black people over my life, many as clients, more as friends, and just, as during the course of my life. And when I talk about many black people's experience of racism, when I ask them this question, real, true, ain't no doubt about it racism, most of them have a story, but it's usually a pretty old story. Some of them have no story at all, but they've heard about other people who told that story. They've heard other people's stories, so they kind of adopt them as their own. Racism is not happening with the frequency that it used to. And as each generation dies, the white generation who used to practice it and who still hold on to some of the vestiges, that's going down and down and down. And the black people whose memories of that trauma, who make them feel like it was just yesterday, when they die, those stories go down and down and down. And as long as there's the compensatory reality where it is getting better and those stories of how bad it was are going down, yeah, that makes me happy. That makes me happy. It makes me optimistic for the future. We all have our part to play. Please listen to the stories that you tell your children and your grandchildren. Ask yourself, is it true? Is what I am saying really true in 2024 still? And I want you to weigh the impact of what you're telling them and how it affects their mind. Am I scaring you unnecessarily? Am I exaggerating the threat? Am I really, really being honest, completely honest, given the circumstances of 2024, when I tell you you can't trust white people and that white cops are out to kill you? For real? For real, for real? We have the data. I'll put a link to Roland Fryer's work in the description. This is going to get better. It's continuing to get better, but we have to do our part. And we have to be aware of the things that we say and to be thinking, I forget the quote, but it's generally, all praise to the man who plants an olive tree today because he'll never see the fruit during his lifetime. You plant that tree for the future generations. You'll never see it producing fruit in your lifetime. It takes so long. Take that same kind of approach to race and racism and how you talk to your children. It's okay to talk about the things that have happened, but in the past, but I also encourage you to talk about all the progress that we've made and how much has changed, and to tell them about your hope for that olive tree, the fruit that it'll bear in the future, and program them with the kind of stories and the kind of hope that can empower that achievement, because we have both got to do this together. White people and black people, we're going to solve this together. It will not be solved alone. Let's do this. Let's keep on doing this. We've been doing this. Let's keep on doing it. Keep on fighting the good fight. Keep pushing. Peace.